Nice to be here at NPC 2021, and I have a very interesting session planned up with a couple of really interesting speakers who are actually a, a, a veteran SaaS buyers and users today for this interesting session on buyer side insights on the everything as a subscription session. So let me just start with Brajesh. Brajesh is Head of Digital Innovation CoE at Dr. Reddy Labs. And as you know, if I can put healthcare in the, pharma in the overall larger bucket of healthcare and bio, this is one of the most happening verticals today, thanks to COVID. And it would be amazing to have Brajesh, who has an experience of building products and platform, being part of DRL. And he comes with solid consulting background, worked previously with McKinsey, and a digital thought leader, an innovator who is building the products, and he's also a consumer of SaaS solutions. So he will have unique insight in terms of both building and also buying SaaS solutions. So welcome, Brad. Nice to have you on the stage.
Thank you. Nice to be here. It's actually a privilege to be here. And thanks for that kind introduction, Jay.
Great. Nice having you here. And I think we are having a little challenge with the another panelist, Umesh Parshetye. He is, on a lighter note, like any banker, having some technical challenges joining a web session. So we will give him some more time.
Sure.
He just introduce Umesh. He's the CTO of the ASK Group, which is one of India's largest equity portfolio wealth management company. They manage 70,000 crores of AUM for the investors, and Umesh drives the digital transformation journey in the ASK Group. He sets the IT vision, he executes, and most importantly, he partnered with multiple SaaS companies in this digital transformation journey in the last 4 or 5 years. I know Umesh for long, and a great, I would say, SaaS buyer or a champion, and hard negotiators. I thought it will be a very interesting conversation having him today with asking those questions about what are the buyer side of the insights that the companies or the users of SaaS can get while they're in their own transformation journey. So the moment Umesh is able to join, we'll get him on the stage and we'll start the engagement with him. Let me right now start with a little bit of the background of the session. And it's great that NPC, NESCOM championing Indian SaaS, world class from India. So the kind of emphasis that SaaS is getting, software is getting, products are getting is amazing. We are actually living in a different IT 2.2 era from India for the world. And what we hear is software is eating the world. And when it comes to when it is eating the world and the software is being consumed as a SaaS, one of the statistics says 3/4 of the software today in the world is being consumed as software as a subscription, as a service. So that means it's a phenomenon, it's a trend that's happening in front of our eyes, how software is being consumed today. And what we thought today is we're going to go a little bit deeper. We'll do a deep dive into the buyer side and the why part of it. Why it has such a momentum? Why actually buyers are inclining towards software as a subscription, software as a service, and so we'll go a little bit deep dive on the why part of it. Let me start with Braj, very first question, and I think the most important question that I want to start off with. What is the modern SaaS buyer's journey, right? How do you discover software today? How do you consume software today? How do you plan on onboarding a new software today? What is new buyer journey, right? Compared to the erstwhile, pre-internet era software that was developed, then the post-internet era software that's developed as a SaaS. How the journey has evolved from the buyer side, Raj?
Thanks, Vijay. Before I actually go to the question, I would like to sort of, just highlight this, because when you were introducing the topic, I actually realized, funnily enough, that most part of my career I have actually spent, or a larger part of my career I have actually spent building products. Okay. when I switched to consulting with McKinsey and then to an enterprise full time, I realized that when I used to build the products as a provider, I hardly ever or very the thought process, the knowledge of what a buyer wants was so limited. Okay, and now that I'm on the other side, I actually realize that a product can be built well and it might look great, but if it doesn't really solve the problems in a nuanced, contextualized way, it just doesn't work. Okay, and most of the products today that we see that are successful is predominantly because of that. Okay, and you can just summarize saying that it's empathy, and I'm sure there's some other factors, but that is something that I want to do. So I kind of empathize with both sides now, being now having spent some time on both sides. But yeah, I think that is the biggest thing. And my answer to your question really comes from there. So today I would follow the usual approach, right? That anybody would follow. So I would go through analyst research papers from Gartner, Forrester, IDC, all of that. I will check in with my peer network. I'll look for input from from a network on LinkedIn. I sometimes, when information is hard to come by, I'll tap into the expert networks. I'll tap into consultants. All of that I do, and that those are all no-brainers. But now what has happened is, I think instead of just looking for information, today there is one element that I've added. Okay, having been in the buyer side, and that I think is helping me a lot, at least. Is that now that I'm on the buyer side, I understand the requirement better, the use case better, okay, or the need better. What I do is, instead of just reaching out, randomly, what I do is I first kind of try to articulate what I really need, okay, and then when I send that out or broadcast it out, the responses that I get are way more relevant, saves me a lot of time, much more efficient as a process. I feel. So I think the providers may not always know your business, your organization well. So you have to take that step towards it. You have to help them help you, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you touched upon a very interesting part, right? The education part of the buyer today is much higher, right? The awareness part. So
Yes.
they have lot more information, many avenues to explore, discover, understand their need versus the solutions out in the market. I think that's a paradigm change for both sides, in terms of not just taking from the whoever you are inviting and just hearing from them, versus you find a lot of information on the internet. But I think a lot of SaaS journeys start from there today, than just jumping into a procurement conversation and then inviting. So there's a lot more legwork and homework happening, and the buyers are much more empowered. I think the journey has the buyer journey has completely changed in the journey in current today, and I think it will continue to be a lot more self-service, self-empowered, and the commercials is where actually you will need to have an interface, right? I think that's the trend.
That is true. I think that is true. I think if I may add a little bit more to what you just said, right? I think if you look at the big names like a Salesforce, like a Slack, the general, the fact that they have now become big, they have got so much of industry experience. So if you hear from them, it's quite likely that you will hear use cases that are directly relevant to your organization. But the new have some distance to go to exactly what you said, right? Having done that research proactively to know about my use cases, right? And then come to me with something that is very relevant, right? So just makes the conversation much more efficient. They have some way to go, and that's where basically I basically empathize with them, and I feel like taking some steps from my own side, giving them something that they can work with and all that. So yeah, that's how the evolution is happening, but I think we'll get there soon.
Absolutely. That comes to the next important, I think the most important conversation when it comes to buying something, right? The pricing and the how do you look at the value of what you're buying? When it comes to SaaS, versus the legacy approach of buying on-premise software or a perpetual license software, which used to be the 90s and early 2000s model of buying software. But when it comes to 2000, still I see there are 30% of the buyers are using some of those, for many other reasons, right? And the new buyer, the SaaS side of it is more about annual multi-year subscriptions and the much more focused on ROI and adoption and usage than buy something, put it in the shelf and not use it. So how do you see this changing? Like how are the dynamics changing when it comes to what are business users saying when they're buying software? How do they want to work with IT? What is the ROI and some of the TCO considerations that you are seeing in industry when using as a buyer, as a SaaS buyer?
Okay, a short answer to that is the line is blurring, okay, between business and IT, and that's a welcome news, by the way. If I elaborate my answer, if you go a little back in time, right, there are two key movements that happened, which I think has enabled this. Okay, one is enterprise agility, with the whole agile being a common usage, common way to get something done, and then the whole thing about digital transformation. Okay, both the movements, I think, in the industry, I think they should be credited for bringing business and IT together. Now, if you understand this, what this really means is that now business is way more knowledgeable about IT. IT is not a back office organization anymore, and there are a lot of people in business who are now digital savvy. So what that now does is basically gives business that capability to actually try to think of experimenting and actually quickly carry out some of these experiments. Right now, if you want to do some experiment, what's the better way than SaaS, right? So there is a natural demand for SaaS software to basically be agile, be nimble, and then have an idea, quickly try it out, right? So essentially business is now well capable of, especially in mature organizations, business is well capable of adopting SaaS. Okay, sometimes even without any IT support, right? Which I think is a good thing, because if the digital and business, they come together, I think that only augurs well for the organization as a whole.
Absolutely. And if I can give one example, in my own company, which we are just a 60 people startup, and we use at least 30 plus SaaS software today. I think that sets the trend that the SaaS first approach, first of all, and that comes from the companies like ours, which are actually digital native. We're born in the cloud world. We are actually born in the digital world, and we just look nothing beyond SaaS, right? That is one side of the journey, and the other side of the journey is the enterprise, which has a lot more background and legacy, their technology side, and also the aspirations and ambitions are much higher, and they have a lot more governance and IT in place to handle any kind of workloads, whether it's on-premise or a SaaS. So there, the journeys are, the thought process is different. But very interestingly, one of the points that I wanted to bring is most of the software that we use starts with freemium, right? We use free software, and we don't mind using free software. And we research enough that the software is actually credible enough, security, all those aspects we take care. And I think they are being taken care by the SaaS players themselves. So which actually makes us much more, gives us a lot more peace of mind when using those software. So using free software or freemium to start with, which you just touched upon, that you try it first and then you jump into the usage of it. So in that, how do you see this? How are you thinking about using freemiums and free software? Is enterprise comfortable with it, and is there a point of view that you have to go with a very structured procurement process, or I can't even try anything before I even go to procurement? Can you add a little more buyer insights there, the journey insights? Hey, by the way, we have Umesh joined us. Hey, Umesh, nice having you on stage.
Hi, Umesh.
Hi. Yeah, I can.
So I was just giving on a lighter note. Umesh was having technical challenges like any banker who joins a web software.
And I'm into private banking as well. So of course, I'll have more security, which was not allowing me to join.
So
Right.
that's what we thought. So we were just started, and we had a couple of interesting discussions about it. And what we're talking about is and how do you start the journey? How do you, is it enterprise okay with starting freemium, the free side? Use it
Right.
first and then buy it. Is the trend you're seeing happening? Which is the trend in the SMB side or the startup side? But how are enterprises doing that? And just we'll start with Braj
Yeah.
and Umesh. We can add there. Yeah.
So happy to say this is another subtopic that I'm quite passionate about. Okay. So I'll tell you, anything that I sort of have an opinion on is usually from a business lens. Okay. So and like I alluded to earlier, uh, freemium version allows a business to try out something real quick. Okay, to prove an idea whether it works or disprove it, right? And then move on. That's a game changer for any business. Now, and then you also mentioned that it gives you the opportunity to sort of try it risk free. There's you can also, even if you pay for it upfront, you can start with a low tier sort of usage and then gradually go up, right, based on your needs. So all of that is obvious. Now, again, if you go back a little in time, how did this happen, and why am I passionate about it? So the thing is, if you remember, about a decade ago, when suddenly mobile development became a big deal, DevOps was a big deal suddenly, and then we had JavaScript becoming the key tech stack for mobile development, right? Native or hybrid. Now, what happened, and then also this whole Stack Overflow enabled community, the developer community become really strong. There's a lot of voices coming up and all that. All of this really sort of brought in the adoption of freemium software. Okay. And then after that, we have never looked back. Okay.
Yeah.
So initially the traction was only among the techie communities, right? And I'm glad I was part of the movement. But after that, the enterprises were very resistant. InfoSec would always stand, in the way. They will never allow it. There were also memes on Twitter that, if you see, there is a big pile of rocks supported by a small tiny rock, saying that this is a JavaScript library that is not supported by anybody else right now. So your whole enterprise architecture is basically registering on the small tiny JavaScript library, right? So all that, but that was past. I think anything that becomes mature over time. So we have, I think, gone past that. Now, in my organization, many other that I hear, InfoSec is much more open to this. These, premium software, open source software are now much more sort of security compliant for different industries and all. So I think it's really good. It's really good
Just a matter of
space
time.
to be in as a techie. Yeah.
It's going to be the new way of discovering and actually starting a software and using a software. You use it, you try it, you like it, then you buy it. I think buying will come
Yes.
much more later, up the journey in the whole discovery cycle. So Umesh, you want to add anything here? I'm sure I know from banking and the financial services perspective, you'll have some different
process seamless
dynamics. Yeah. So free, how you can only buy and use it, you try, what happens in your side of the world?
It's a very highly regulated industry, and premium is something ideally not allowed as part of the regular or a standard part of process. And if you have to do it, probably you do it on one of your a PC which is not in your enterprise network, it's somewhere directly connected to the internet, and you all
With
there's
your own
some few
data,
systems are
with your own
available.
data and your own risk, and
Few
yeah.
systems are available with the IT team where the direct connection is there on the internet, which is not having any InfoSec controls, and does not also have it in the enterprise network as well. So you try out anything which you want to try out there, but again, it's very limited scope because only few people will have such kind of facility to try it out. So ideally, this premium process doesn't work. But what I have seen, the community version, there was a spike in the usage, and thereafter again people have moving towards getting into the licensed or a support version, or even if it is an open source or in a commodity version that we probably take it. So what I have seen in BFSI, people probably try out in these areas small with the some sandbox environment that you create, and then probably you get onto the clear understanding
Yeah.
what are the terms of your commercial, functional, technical, and administrative in terms of adopting to that particular service, software as a service. And then you probably try and get into the actual structured mode of understanding your engagement with them, and then you get into actual a paid version or a licensed version or a support paid version of a commodity license to ensure that at any point of time, due to highly regulated industry, you don't run out of compliance and a regulator or a infosec
Yeah,
risks.
yeah, yeah.
This
I
is
think
what
that is the major driver, right? More than anything else, I think infosec and compliance on the data being a very regulatory industry, and rightfully so. There's a lot many people involved, and a lot many things can happen, right? Raj, you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to hear what Umesh said. I think I'll go back to when I go back to office. I'll probably personally going to congratulate my CISO, our infosec officer, because pharma, as you know, so we are a North America heavy pharma
Yeah,
company, right? So we cannot move a millimeter without having an FDA approval. And FDA compliance is, if you know, life sciences healthcare in US is like the
yeah,
never-ending
yeah.
set of compliance.
Known
So
for it,
we
yeah.
have, I'm kind of say that with some sense of pride that we've done fairly well, in adoption of both freemium as well as open source software. But I think, yeah, as with anything, there is still room for improvement. But like I said, I'm quite proud to sort of hear that. So
Yeah, yeah.
thanks so much for sharing that.
So, Umesh, just wanted to ping a little bit more onto when it comes to when you're buying a new software, right? Especially from financial services background. What are the key things that you think about, and why SaaS is becoming a new norm in the industry, right? Three-fourths of the world's software is now being consumed as SaaS, right? What are the if you can add a little bit more on your thinking and your business thinking about how you approach a new software, the ROI, the TCO part of it, and why you see SaaS is the right way than a erstwhile perpetual licensing, buying upfront and adopting versus the subscription and the adoption goes together kind of culture that SaaS software has created globally. So what is that goes in your side of the industry? When you're buying a new software, what is the ROI and TCO thinking that you do today?
Sure. Nice question, Vijay. A very important question. So there is no thumb rule that anyone can apply where everything is going to be SaaS. No. Is everything is going to be perpetual? No. Probably 20 years back, 15 years back, 10 years back, we were all more of time of perpetual. Things started getting changed, and what at least we adopt at ASK is what is the fitment, a rightful fitment of the engagement that we are trying to do in any system or any software that you are trying to engage and implement to solve the business problem or the address business challenges, or towards the futuristic implementation that you want to do and take the advantage technologically towards the business competition. So what we try and always do is that we always look at every requirement that we are trying to automate and transform from the technology side using digital or hardware or network or security. We always try and see what are we trying to achieve by getting into a perpetual, and when is the perpetuity is going to get applicable. When you know that your system is not going to have much more dynamic requirement in terms of changes or enhancement or the upgrades, I would prefer to go with a perpetual and probably a system which requires more stability, of course doesn't get into a multiple change cycle, and then we would probably go with the perpetuity kind of engagement, because we know there's no much change is going to happen in this. If the change is going to be planned change, much in advanced planning and in a rightful way of approach that we take it. The systems which probably required, like I'll tell you, the way the customer experience is changing across the touch points now. Now, those related systems, I don't think that we can get into a perpetuity based of systems. because the kind of change that you will do or transformation that you will do, or you will get pushed by the peers or the competition or by the demand from customers, employees, partners, and the business, is going to push you that you need to get into a very continuous mode of change, which is a complete agile method or a waterfall. No other project management cycles are going to get applicable. In those kind of systems, we would probably always try and see how we should go in a subscription based systems or platforms where those agility and the resiliency is available with you to maneuver by yourself as per the need on demand.
Fantastic.
That's where the
Fantastic.
decision making happens between the perpetual and the subscription. And of course, the commercial angle also comes into the picture. When you are a big enterprise, I would tell you, if you are a 25,000 user base or a 50,000 user base, looking and going towards a SaaS is a very time or a nuclear bomb that you are going to adopt. You need to think through so much that in next 10 years, 15 years down the line, how are you going to fare on your commercial impact, and of course as well as on the other side of the impact. So decisions are very much important, which type of enterprise that you are in and what type of business agility or a dynamic that is bringing in, and the decisions are always going to be like that. It cannot be any thumb rule that you can apply.
Exactly. And I think you just touched upon one of my next important question about the pitfalls, and you briefly already touched upon it. It's not everything great and hunky-dory when it comes to SaaS, right? I think SaaS is a new way of consuming software, but it has its own challenges and pitfalls. It's an early industry. As a buyer, you need to look at the commercial and your annual commercial aspects and the total cost of ownership. I think there are a lot of pain points that the industry has in that area. I mean, you being talking candidly as a buyer who goes through it every day about how your cost escalates over the time in software as a subscription model, and how you need to really, one of the pitfalls is to how do you really plan for it? How do you actually mitigate that risk with a intelligent commercial conversation with the partner and make sure that you are able to manage that risk, right? Versus the value, because your value might not be increasing as quick as the price. So that's one of the major pitfalls. Braj, you want to add anything else that on the SaaS, as a SaaS buyer, what could be pitfalls when it comes to adoption, commercial, or any of those and the key aspects of SaaS?
Well, cost is one of the key aspects for sure. We want to make sure that we don't get surprised every year. So we basically ensure on a longer sort of a contract so that the prices don't keep fluctuating. Price projection continues to be a challenge essentially with SaaS, is what I'm trying to say. Our own internal procurement, in enterprises has to evolve to sort of support the SaaS model better. Challenges are not only on the SaaS provider side. There's a lot of challenges in the enterprise side also, depending on what kind of legacy industry you belong to, right? External factors are there. Regulatory compliances change, so you have to the SaaS product that you are buying must be must be specializing in that industry to keep pace with that. Be it BFSI, be it pharma, insurance, life sciences, right? Basic integration stuff also remains a challenge in many of the SaaS or upcoming SaaS software, like just general integration with your core systems, integration like SSO, right? Those remain challenges. So I think some of these are sort of gotchas, right? You have to be careful, you evaluate before deciding, I would say.
Yeah, I think if you see, there are around, on an average, enterprises use 50 to 100 plus SaaS apps today, right? And is it, when you're buying software like this, how do you think of the integration, the data and those applications talking to each other? Because now SaaS as a trend, it focuses on a niche business process area or a function most of the times. If you look at CRM, if you look at ERPs, if you look at HCM, then there are performance management. There are so many subcategory of SaaS which are leading their categories. And I think SaaS became that way, right? It came up from a specialization in one of the business process or a function, and then you go for it because businesses are much more enabled in their own functions to adopt those softwares. But for IT and for an enterprise, if you look at these are so many siloed applications, and at the end of the day, they have to talk to each other to execute end-to-end business processes for business intelligence from the data point of view. How do you see this coming up? Because having so many apps being adopted so fast. How are you guys thinking about it from the buyer? How are you approaching the integration problem?
Sorry, is this for Umesh or me?
Yeah, Braj, you can take it, and it's actually for both. Any of you can.
Umesh, you can start. I
Yes, you
think.
go ahead. Oh,
Okay, sure. No, I can. I think I have, for me, among other things, the key thing that I look for is existence of an API ecosystem. Right now, your API ecosystem may not be the soul of or heart of integration currently in an organization, but if you at least have it, any SaaS product that you bring on board, it makes life way more of order of magnitude better, easier. Many organizations don't see API ecosystems, API management platforms as a investment because they're not really business facing. Yes, unless you're into API economy and all those things. So yeah, that's probably for me is the single biggest factor.
Yeah, yeah, great. Umesh,
yeah.
how do you see it?
So any SaaS application, like Braj said, perfect without having the gamut of or the capabilities of APIs integrations. You cannot even look into a further evaluation if you are not. One sec. The light is an auto switch off mode. Saving, sorry. So you need to look at the API ecosystem which is available, right from the SSO, right from the legacy application integrations, right from the third party systems integrations. If it does not have that ecosystem availability, that itself doesn't fit into the evaluation criteria in the beginning itself. It has to have
Yeah,
the
API
good
first.
amount of coverage. Yes, that's very important. Without the API coverage, I would say none of the SaaS applications are going to sustain in a long term. They will die.
Sure.
They will die
And
by
and
itself.
and and the API itself is a complex topic. I mean, what is available, what is not
Absolutely.
available, and
Yeah.
the kind of data customizations that you do at your enterprise. I think it's a a full-fledged topic on its own. But yeah, I think having that's a prerequisite is having an API first approach for buying before you actually look into buying a SaaS option. What are the APIs available out of box at least to, and what kind of flexibility it
Correct.
provides to create your own APIs out of it to publish it for the your own internal developers or the third party developers that you're collaborating with,
Correct.
right?
The
That's very
three
important.
things which
So
probably, yeah,
sure,
yeah,
sure, please,
sorry.
please go ahead.
The three things which probably is one is the, of course, the technical capabilities of the SaaS platform, along with the OEM who is driving the ecosystem or the SaaS solution for you. Are they having a real good amount of band? I would say a capacity to sustain themselves. If they're a startup or if they're a established player with the good amount of cash flow with them, or the cash-rich companies who really can sustain good amount of innovation and the product enhancement continuously. That's one probably key aspect to look at. Second is the information security and the data privacy controls that it also brings along
Correct.
as part of the platform or as part of the system from their side is a very important. And healthcare, BFSI, all very highly regulated entities in terms of whether it's India or global. And the third, of course, the flexibility that they can bring in. Like most of the time, people say, or these OEM says pay per use, but there are so many hidden and the transparency issues are there in terms of the limitation onto the API calls, limitation to the record, how many records they can create, how many storage capacity. So I can go on the list because these fine prints are very important aspect that you need to look into.
I think SaaS will evolve
And
into keeping it much more simple, and it's never
Yeah.
simple because one side you want to please the buyer, one side we want to make sure that we grow as per the usage and with the value. So I think that's where the
correct.
balance has to come. As Braj mentioned about having API first thinking, and with that API you have a public transparent framework to share with the customers, and it's very important. So I know we're coming
Transparency is
towards
very
this.
important.
Yeah, we're
Transparency
coming
is
towards
very important.
exactly.
Sorry, but that is the, I would say that's the break or success game for any SaaS companies. In a short term, you gain after non having
Yeah,
transparency, but in long term, you are going to be loser only.
exactly. I think the trust and transparency what will make the any business grow, right? SaaS industry has to do the same. Um, I know we're coming towards the end, but I want to, one important question I want to with both of you on the adoption, right? So buying is one part of it, and adoption is a completely different problem or different journey. So how do you see this adoption happening in your organization? So many apps, on an average, they say a business user, a knowledge worker is today operating on 8+ apps to perform his jobs today. So it's too much for a human, right? While SaaS, DevOps, no code is a lot of software is being
Yeah.
created, but our minds are still the same, right? We can only consume so much of knowledge every day, and so much we can only learn so much things every day. So how are you helping business users on their job to succeed and adopt these technologies that you are deploying? Or there's a huge problem that industry is facing today on the adoption side, right? A lot of 30% of these apps are being retired every year on the SaaS apps in an enterprise on average. So it's a very high churn of retirement of SaaS applications. While there is a high churn, high onboarding, high churn is also happening. So how do you guys see that from your side, both of you, if you can share, starting with maybe Umesh,
Raj,
if
you
you
go
can
ahead.
start. Umesh, you start off
Yeah,
with, and then
I
Brajabhusan
will.
can add.
Okay, I'll start. So again, there are multiple factors. So I think adoption dashboard, if any SaaS provider is giving as part of their basic functionality, will be a very good, I would say, a tool and probably a key driver where any companies who are actually adopting the SaaS system, and that SaaS system by default also provides the adoption dashboard and reporting capabilities out of box, which helps to the technology teams like us to drive if there are any issues to the end users, whether it's a training, whether it's awareness, or whether it's any political, tactical, all sort of understanding that you get when there is no adoption. And then you use those information to ensure that you use all Sam, Dam, Dandaved nitis to ensure that your TCO or your ROI is actually getting to the on table by whatever management support, whether it's a ground level support when you go and sit with the process people at the ground level, and then all those. So the adoption dashboard is something which I would prefer that every SaaS OEM vendor should make it part of their functional uh, uh, basic
Basic
offering.
functionality. Yeah, yeah,
Basic
yeah,
offering. That's what
yeah.
something that I would leave that Braj to
Great.
add, please.
Yeah, I think great way. I think great, well articulated, Umesh. I think I would say three things. For me, from my side, one is on the provider side, and the other two are on my side, on the enterprise side. Okay, from the SaaS side, see, nobody taught me to how to use Uber. Nobody taught me how to use Spotify, right? If the user journey, the customer experience is taken well care of, I think the adoption just becomes that much more seamless, because ultimately you want a
Absolutely.
larger number of users to sort of adopt it, right? That's the first thing on the buyer side. The other, so the provider side, the buyer side, I think there are two things. One, we basically want to make sure that every now and then we, periodically we do all this tech consolidation, like, application performance rationalization, the application rationalization, so that the portfolio is not too diverse and all that, and there is, one or maximum two things to do, get something done, so people have a limited set of applications to use. That is something that the CIO organization have to sort of proactively do it. There's no two way about it. Third thing, which I think is also a big driver, is basically getting the senior leadership onto this. If I am a senior leader and then I have 100 people sort of in my organization, and I want them to use the SaaS software, but then I always want an email update or an Excel update, then that defeats the purpose, right? So yes, so I should also be equally bought into use the software on a day-to-day basis, right? If the three things are taken care of, I have seen success should come easy.
Absolutely. I think they are very, very specific and important, nuances of using SaaS software, any software actually. And as you rightly said, the buy-in from the top down and the usage from the top down is important. and enable from the bottom up. I mean, enabling with right, as you mentioned, the training, actually real time, just in time enablement. I think that's the new trend.
Exactly.
Where actually a user is performing something and we are enabling him to perform the task successfully. The technology is actually enabling that kind of facilitation today. So focusing on that will really trigger more adoption on the ROI on the software that's been brought in. Great insights. Thanks both of you. But I have a very surprising rapid fire for both of you. We'll just take 1 minute and then shoot it, and then we'll conclude.
I'm usually scared of these things.
But it's very SaaS specific, so don't worry about it. I'm not going to ask anything personal.
Okay.
So Umesh, free tier or freemium? Using free tier software, you can, just using free tier or freemium, which one you prefer?
I would not prefer anything.
I know. that's the whole thing. So what is that you want? If not free tier or premium, what is that you look at a software to start?
I would probably look at a solution where they give me probably 3 months time or a 1 month's time as kind of a POC or a pilot project as a free, with the proper engagement, understanding what is I'm getting into once I accept the POC and sign up the pilot project.
So I would put them
get
under
into
a free
that
tier.
kind of engagement.
I would put them in the free tier with a 3 months thinking, right?
That's okay.
Free trial.
You can consider as a free tier. Yes.
Free trial, yeah, free trial. Then Braj, for you, monthly subscription versus usage-based pricing.
Usage-based any day.
Any day, awesome. Umesh, annual or multi-year deal?
Multi-year deal.
Great. Braj, in-person sales conversation versus self-service, self-discovery and self-payment.
The everything self that you mentioned.
Everything self. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Umesh, user reviews versus customer reference calls.
Customer reference calls first, then user reviews.
How about you, Brad?
No, reference calls any day. I would always prefer to reach out to Umesh to get his feedback rather than looking at orchestrated customer reviews.
Okay. Last question for both of you. Any software that you can think of which can never be a SaaS for you? This can never be a SaaS for me. Is there anything like that?
I don't think so.
Anything can be SaaS, right? So. Everything can be a subscription. How about you?
Yes.
See, never say never, right? But I think an almost never answer for me is anything related to GXP compliance, right? See, GXP compliance stops my plants from getting approvals, right? I can't manufacture. I mean, I can manufacture, but I cannot sell it anywhere, right? Medicines, right? So that's pretty much 40% revenue for me. So GXP compliance
that can be SaaS for you. Okay, good.
Probably very highly unlikely.
Yeah, you guys been a sport. Thank you very much. I think that concludes our very interactive session. It's a lot of good insights. I think basic insights that any SaaS buyer would be thinking, how they are thinking and why they are thinking that way, and what is actually driving the growth of SaaS-based software consumption. Thanks very much, both of you. It's a pleasure having you, Braj and Umesh. Looking forward to talking to you off the stage.
Always a pleasure, the NASCOM conferences, and Vijay, thanks, very well orchestrated. Umesh, very, very nice insights, actually. I'm taking 2-3 things away, actually, from you, Umesh, today. Thank you.
We are all, we too. Thanks, Braj.
Thank you.